Joining me on her Friday night and my Saturday morning is Lisa Mann. Lisa, thanks for taking the time and joining me today.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you.
It's good to talk to you. Now, we will be leading up to the magnificent White Crone album. But first, give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you've been doing and what led up to this.
Oh, gosh. Well, that's a long story.
Scary.
Well, you know, I was a young budding bass player. When I was a kid, I just was attracted to the sound of the bass. And my parents had albums from bands like Cream and Led Zeppelin and you know, Black Sabbath. And I love that sound. And I would plunk out bass lines on my mom's acoustic guitar until one day I saw a violin-shaped bass. It looked like the Beatle bass, but it was like a Japanese copy of that bass.
Yeah.
And I saw it at a pawn shop and I was like, that's it. And I put $10 down on the thing and I walked home from school, saved my lunch money to buy that bass. So I became a bass player at a very young age. I played in some punk crossover metal bands, started with a band called Dead Conspiracy, played some gigs. I went to a lot of shows, was really into heavy metal and Iron Maiden, man, that just played all those Steve Harris licks, you know.
Pretty hard to be a bass player and not be influenced by Steve Harris.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, you know. So, yeah, I just, then I decided I wanted to work as a bass player, became a top 40 rock player at the age of 19. And eventually, you know, just playing gigs. And eventually I moved back to Portland from Seattle, lived in Seattle during the 90s and started getting into blues. And I really fell in love with blues music. And I realized that all those early licks that I was playing on the bass from, you know, Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and stuff, it was like, that's blues, man. You know, it was like a real revelation, you know. So, yeah, I'm a professional blues musician. That's what I do for a living. But I never lost my love of heavy metal. And so I created White Crone as kind of an alter ego, my evil twin.
So have you been gigging with White Crone or is that a studio thing?
No, it's just a studio project, really. And actually, I wasn't even sure I was going to release it. I thought it was just going to be something for me, for my own edification. And it's just mostly me and a drummer. So Larry London plays the majority of the drums. I play the majority of the guitar. I play all the bass and do all the singing. And so, you know, there's not really a band to be had. Mehdi Farjami from Glacier laid down a few really good solos that they were like way above my pay grade, you know, and then Vinny Appice guested, had a guest percussionist, Catone Lyles, and recorded it at Opal Studios in Portland. And yeah, it's really just a recording project. It's not to say if there's enough demand someday, you know, maybe I'll put a band together, but it'd be a big undertaking. I'd have to teach everybody my guitar parts.
So how long did it take to get all this together? Were you writing it as you go, or did you have all this stuff like demoed, if you like, and then just sort of go in and do it properly? How long did the whole process take?
Yeah, I did full pre-production at home in my spare time because, like I said, you know, I'm a full-time working blues musician, and you know, I'm dealing with radio promotions and gigs and tours and stuff like that. And you know, I just did this in my spare time, really. And so it took a few years. Actually, when I started, I would just hear stuff in my head. It actually started when I first heard Cerise by Ghost.
Right.
And I was just like, wow, that's weird. That's crazy. And people are like, that's not real metal. And it sounds like disco. And I'm like, yeah, but that guy doesn't care what you think. He's just being creative and he's a great songwriter. And so it inspired me to just say, you know, why should I worry what these blues people think? You know, I just do what you want. And then all of a sudden I started hearing these bass lines and melodies and guitar parts and I'd sing them into my phone. I'd have to jump out of the shower and like sing stuff into my phone, pull over the car, you know. So I started doing pre-production at home and I recorded everything at home, including the drums badly. I wrote all the drums really terribly on an E-kit. And I bought myself a 7-string guitar and
excellent.
and eventually decided, let's get it in the studio with a real drummer.
When you hear music that influences you, does the bass drill into your head? Do you hear that? Or
Usually.
from a bass player's point of view, does it get in your head from a bass? Do you hear that sort of backing?
Yeah.
I don't know how to even ask the question properly.
I think it depends on the band. It's like Judas Priest is really a big influence. But a lot of Ian Hill's bass lines are like ding, 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 and so it's more like Rob Halford's lines. Or I have a picture of Glenn Tipton on my wall. It says, "What
Excellent.
would Glenn Tipton do?" So it's like, so for a band like that, WWGTT, it actually says that up on my wall. So yeah, when I'm listening to Judas Priest, it's the guitar lines that influence me. When I'm listening to Dio, it's the vocals, When I'm listening to Iron Maiden, of course, it's the bass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now we'll get on to the White Crone album, which is excellent.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a real trip. I mean, I put that on and I'm like, wow. I mean, I started getting into like heavy rock and metal in like probably 79, 80, because I wasn't exposed to it. I didn't have parents with, Led Zeppelin albums. Nothing like that, let me tell you. So I wasn't exposed to it. So when it came into my life, 79, 80, that's when but you listen to this album, like I've obviously gotten into the music from back from the 70s, but listening to the White Crone album, it's a real trip back as if you were alive and into it back then in the 70s.
Well,
how did you do that?
The thing is, I call myself the unfrozen cave woman of metal because there's this whole like 90s and 2000s era of metal that I am pretty damn clueless about.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a few Pantera songs, but all of my references are from what I listened to as a teenager in the 80s. So all of my reference, and I listened to late 70s, Priest, especially. Love Judas Priest, Deep Purple, that kind of stuff, and early Iron Maiden, that real kind of raw, punkish kind of Iron. And also I was into that first wave of black metal stuff.
Yeah.
Celtic Frost, Merciful Fate. Merciful Fate was a big influence. It's odd because a lot of people compare my stuff to Uriah Heep. And I
did hear a lot of that in there. Yeah.
I actually didn't listen to a lot of Uriah Heep.
Yeah.
But I listened to bands that were inspired by Uriah Heep. So I think it kind of came in a recycled way. Yeah. So it's pretty interesting when people say that.
Yeah. I hear a lot of the vibe from, Rainbow, obviously, Heap, Sabbath, all those sorts of bands. But in that era, mainly for me, I hear the early 70s.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you mentioned Judas Priest in there, because that's still the best era of Priest in my eyes.
Me too. Sad Wings. I could listen to Sad Wings all day long.
Yeah.
Front to back.
Stained Class for me.
Stained Class. Oh yeah. Great stuff. It's classic.
Yeah, absolutely. Where did Vinny come into this? That's an interesting one.
Well, I have
friend of a friend.
No, you'll think this is funny. I recorded a song for my blues album, Hard Times, Bad Decisions. I released that in 2016.
That sounds like a country song title.
Hard Times, Bad Decisions. Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
Yeah. So I wrote this song about how people who are coming out of the prison system are treated like pariahs. and they're
Yeah.
just not, especially in this country, they're not given a chance. You know, they've paid their price. And so I had this real slow, this real slow beat. It's like working on a chain gang, you know, like these guys
Yeah.
on the railroad. And so it's like 60 beats per minute. And I kept hearing him. See, Vinny was my favorite drummer, man.
Yeah.
Aside from maybe Dave Lombardo, Vinny Appice is like hands down my favorite drummer. And I kept hearing him playing on this. I got Ben Rice to play slide guitar. It's got all this cool greasy slide guitar. But anyway, I thought to myself, well, what if I ask Dave Million, who's a session drummer I work with, I could ask him to try to play like Vinny. And I just kept going, but I want Vinny. So I thought to myself, well, ask him. And I'd say to myself, well, no, you can't just ask. Well, yeah, you can. Why not? And so I cold called him, man. I just Googled Vinny and I tried to find like an email address.
Shoot your shot.
I found an email address. I shot him an email address. I sent him a song that sounds similar, a song called This Bitch that has a similar feel. And I said, I'm doing a song. It's about this. It's going to have slide guitar in it. Would you be interested? And he said yes. And he did. And he tracked it home. He sent me the tracks. They were mixed over at Opal Studio. It's who I work with. Same guy I worked with for The Poisoner. Same guy does my blues records. He's an old school metalhead too. You know, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of blues people that are into metal too. Yeah. So yeah, that's long story short. I cold called him.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Well, yeah, exactly. And what's the worst thing that could have happened is he just didn't respond or just said no. Yeah. That's the worst thing that could have happened. So why not?
Shoot your shot. Exactly right.
Yeah, I asked Alex Skolnick and he said no. So whatever. Sometime later, Alex. Later, dude. Come on.
All right. So let's go through some of the stuff on this album. What have we got as far as how long do these, before we go any further, how the hell did the Seven Gates of Hell end up on there?
You know what? I was on a transatlantic flight and I knew it was going to be a long ass flight. I've done some tours of the UK with a blues band. Dudley Ross, his guitar player, puts together a band for me over there. And oh, you froze. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, you just froze visual, just the video. But yeah, I knew I was going to be on this long flight. So I loaded up my phone with a bunch of albums. And there was a Venom album that I downloaded. I use Napster. I like Napster. I like the format. I like the fact they pay musicians a little better per stream. But anyway, I had it on, and it's like all these songs like a compilation album. Yeah. It's fun. I'm just chilling, taking a nap, whatever, eat my lunch and listening. And then this song comes on, and I hadn't heard it in ages. And it just hit me how structurally sound that song is, but how brutally performed it was. How just like a raw slab of meat, you know?
Yeah, they were that sort of band. Yeah.
And he's just screaming these vocals. And I thought, just structurally, this song is like a Dio song or something, or a Manowar tune, you know? And I decided I'm going to do this song. Yeah. So while I'm on the plane, I started writing the melody. Yeah. The singing. Okay, what if Dio sang this song? Yeah. And so I started writing the melody for it. And by the time I got off the plane, I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I've got all those early Venom albums, even early Venom singles, just back in there. Sweet. And I actually, just on a side note, managed to see Venom in 1986 in the States. Yeah. And it was pretty wild, let me tell you. But the thing is, when I listened to that album and that came on, and I'm like, are you shitting me? But it shouldn't.
Good.
It shouldn't fit, but it does.
That's that. Okay, good. I
Right.
set out to do that to you, and it worked.
Excellent. What else have we got on here? Any sort of stories behind any of the other songs on
I
there?
gotta look at it. Do I have a copy near me? I don't know. I don't even have a copy. Well, I'll tell you, I'll start with The Dream of Tiamat.
Yep.
That's the first song. That's actually based on a real nightmare I had when I was a teenager. And I was in this cave in the center of the earth, and I saw this serpent, this gigantic serpent with the face of a woman. And I felt drawn to her. And as I approached, and she opened her mouth, and I stuck my head into her mouth, and she bit off my head. And then all of a sudden I was looking out of her eyes, and I was waiting for the next victim to come along. And it was such a profound dream. I never forgot it. And I always wanted to write a song about that dream. And that's the story. And I gave that really a Merciful Fate flavor, just because that sense of fear, that was fear and longing in that song. So that's the story of that one.
What about Broken?
Oh, Broken. Broken is one of the few non-mystical songs, because the majority of White Crone tunes, they are and will be in the future, are going to be like more like storytelling, mystical storytelling. But that's based on reality, and it's about how women have basically participated in their own subjugation throughout history by visiting these awful practices on their daughters. And that's something that always struck me. It's like in China, okay, it was the mother that broke the daughter's foot and bound it, you know, really. And in North Africa, it's like it's the mother that does the circumcision on the female, the 4-year-old girl, you know. And perhaps and then the Bible Belt, that's what the other, you know, it's the mother that says, you know, no, don't speak. You know, when you get married, you'll learn. You don't speak up, you know. So yeah, that always struck me. I always wanted to write a song about that. Why it just perplexes me. It's from the point of view of the mother. It's kind of a wicked song.
Under Hagstones. That's an epic, one of my favorites on the album. Tell us about that one.
Well, I had this idea of an ancient Celtic zombie curse of these beings that died horribly, and they did not want to rest in their graves. And the only way to keep them down was to put these holy stones, you know, the stones that have holes drilled, the hagstones, and to cover the grave with these stones, these river rocks, you know. But over time, people move in, you know, from Europe, and they said, this is just superstition. This is silly, you know. And then over time, people start industrial era, they build buildings and homes, and pretty soon it's like, oh, well, let's put an apartment complex over here. Yeah, let's get rid of these old graves. It's like, look out, man. And here they come out of the graves. So I just love stories like that, you know. I love schlocky horror stories like that.
Excellent. The couple of instrumentals on there, one a longer one a shorter one. Is that pretty much all you?
Yes. The Melancholia, that's me playing one bass. So I play, you know, I play that, and I played chords up higher, and then on my 6-string bass. So it's all one bass, and then I had Larry London play drums behind it that were kind of like marching, and I kind of hear it's almost like a distant battlefield. So that's the image I get, is hearing these drums, distant battlefield. The battle is over, and this melancholy feeling. I guess we've won the battle, but our comrades are dead. That's the feeling that I have
Yeah.
with that song.
There's a real vibe on that one, especially. But I just can't pin it down. It gets stuck in your head and you think, oh man, this is taking me back, man, but I just can't figure out where it's taking me back to. Let's talk about the other one. You did a cover of Stargazer.
Yeah.
So you said, I'll take Rainbow's version and I'll raise you. Tell us about that one. The idea behind that one and how it came together, and you've put a bit more on it, put a bit more cream on the Rainbow version.
Yeah, well, we actually borrowed some of Dream Theater. I think it was their version, to get just more keyboards in there, and it's a brighter sound, and it's not, because the original it's a pretty mushy mix. You know, there's an orchestra in there, and we didn't have an orchestra, and we have slide guitars just all over the place. The origin of that is really, there's a blues rock guitar player is really well known in the blues scene named Alistair Green, and he used to play guitar with Sugar Ray Rayford, and he's a Grammy nominated soul artist. My husband plays bass with Sugar Ray. So I went to Europe and hung out with them when they were on tour and did some backups with them and stuff. And so I got to know Alistair. Now, Alistair, like I said, man, you wouldn't believe how many of these blues musicians are old school metalheads, right? So this dude, he loves all that stuff. He loves, you know, Richie Blackmore and, you know, all that old Iron Maiden, all that stuff, you know, Van Halen. So he and I decided we got to do something together. This is a couple years ago. So we got to do something together. And it's like, all right, I'll come up with something. I'll come up with something. And I was driving in my car one day last year, and I heard Stargazer come on the radio. And I was just like, I was like almost weeping. I hadn't heard it in a long time. And it was just like, wow, I want to sing this song. And then I thought, this is the one I want to do with Alistair. And then once I decided I was going to do that, I was like, I called him, and then I was like, well, who's going to play drums on it? I mean, who might know this song already? You know, so I emailed Vinny, and then the guy who played keyboards, I was in a band with him when I was like 17 years old. So I really wanted to work with somebody the way I did with Mehdi Farjami. Mehdi Farjami, I jammed with him when I was like 15 and 16 years old. Right. So I wanted somebody who's from my heart that time, you know, who was part of my life at that time. So it was like, okay, we're doing it. It was mostly remote tracking, but it just like, it worked. I'm pretty pleased with it. It's really long.
We've talked about your bass influences. Let's talk about singing. When did you start?
Yeah. Well, I started singing along with my mom's records. My dad was more into the Led Zeppelin and Cream and you know, stuff like that. But my mom was into Barbra Streisand and Melissa Manchester and Ima Sumac. She was into singers. She loved Dio too, you know. After, you know, when I was a teenager, she took me to a Dio concert when I was a teenager, and she just loved singers, and she encouraged me to sing. I would go karaoke with her and sing Whitney Houston and stuff like that. And but really, I love to sing. She hated it when I sang along with my Merciful Fate record. She hated that, but she loved it when I sang along with my Iron Maiden records and with Judas Priest and Dio and Manowar and stuff like that. She loved that. So Eric Adams was a huge influence. You know, Rob Halford, Bruce Dickinson, and Dio. I'd say Bruce Dickinson and Dio, my two biggest influences. Yeah. I'd say some Ann Wilson, some Geddy Lee in there, you know, but mostly Bruce is probably my biggest influence.
Yeah. The vocals on this album, they really match it more than I think anyone can possibly fathom, if you like. They're so, you've got the ideal voice for this. I mean, I know you're writing it yourself, but it just fits so well. And that's another one of these trips back in time.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, most of my I've had like there was an audition I had a long time ago where the band was split about whether they would hire me to sing in their project because my voice is low. And it was a symphonic metal project. Later on, the two kind of split apart, and I ended up singing. It's a project called Cry for Eden.
Right.
But I remember it was kind of controversial because it was like, well, they want someone like Nightwish. There's this idea of the female singer is supposed to have this head voice and sing
it can really be overdone, that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's marketable, and then people say, I want to be part of that market, and they put something, but this is not me. I don't think like that.
No.
So,
look, I'm in a symphonic metal as well, but sometimes the operatic vocals can be overdone.
Yeah.
And I heard a symphonic metal band recently, and the thing that struck me was they weren't trying, it didn't sound like they were trying to be Nightwish.
Yeah.
Or trying to sound like they're coming from Finland. So
you have to
that
tell
was a
me.
big
They are. You have to pass that on later.
Yeah.
I mean, we just sound like what we sound like. And so, I really appreciate that you appreciate my voice because, like I said, most of my metal vocal influences are men. So I have somewhat of a masculine sounding voice in some ways, just because those are my influences. Some people like it, some people don't.
And that's good variety.
It's the spice of life.
Yeah. What else should we chat about here? We've gone all over this album, all about.
I would love to talk about 18 Rabbit. 18 Rabbit.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
the last track on the album for people new to the conversation. Yes.
That's kind of the crux. It's kind of the center of the White Crone project, really. And years ago, I saw a documentary about the Mayan king, whose name I cannot even pronounce. They called him 18 Rabbit. That's what they named him. The archaeologist named him. And he was a patron of the arts. Architects, came in from all over to his kingdom. By some accounts, it was a peaceful kingdom. They weren't warring with anybody. And they built these incredible stone monuments. And he left this massive legacy of this city of just incredible stone. Well, most of them had his face on it, but he was a Mayan king. That's what they did back then. But his story, he also came to this grisly end because these warring tribes were jealous of his kingdom. And so that's part of the story of the song. And then at the end, I have this tapping verse about, leaving a legacy of art for the future. And so that whole song just kind of wraps up. It's got this big lot of Iron Maiden bass influences and stuff. And so just that song is just really special to me because I feel like it's a story that people should know. And he was this person in history that I think people should know about.
Yes, you may have heard me typing. I was just Googling that.
Yeah,
I can see why you're not going to try and pronounce it.
Kawil something.
Waza Klaja Muba Kawil.
Yeah.
Or something like that. But I've probably got it way wrong because they pronounce our letters differently over there, which is fine. Yes, that looks like an interesting story, one which I shall read after this phone call.
Yeah.
So that's another fascinating one, the big epic to finish the album. Yeah, so where can people get this album? I noticed you've got a Bandcamp
Yes.
set up. Is that the best place for you?
That's the best place because you're going to get it directly from me. And if you want the CD itself, I don't have the CD. I don't know. It's laying around here somewhere. But if you would like to buy the CD and you are in the EU or elsewhere and the shipping cost is too high, message me. But also there is a low cost shipping option where I basically just pull the tray out. I pop the tray out. It already has like it has a booklet in it. So it has a slot where I can just put the CD. And so you would just get it without the plastic tray. So there's a low shipping option because yeah, it's really expensive to ship anything from the US, but you can also download the album. I have patches. I have a few t-shirts left. And yeah, it's at whitecrone.bandcamp.com. That is definitely the best place. I'll autograph it for you, you know. So that's the best place. But you can also stream it. I always encourage people, add it, stream it, put it on, add it on your playlists on Spotify. You know, we don't make a lot of money per stream, but so many people use Spotify, you know, especially with my blues career, I've made a good chunk of change on Spotify. So it all does help when you like an artist, whoever they are, whatever platform you use. Just stream it, add them to your playlists, buy the merch.
Old school people like you and I really miss the big chunk of cardboard.
Yeah.
And
that
was
smell.
a special time in life, which the kids today just don't get.
Liner notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Headphones on, album in your hand, reading the lyrics.
Yeah.
Assuming there was wow, this one's got lyrics. Yep, so that was good. You couldn't just look them up online. Kids are spoiled these days.
Fold out album, you know.
Yeah.
It's alive too. Yeah.
Yeah, and the double live within the
yeah.
The inserts.
The inserts and stuff, yeah.
Good times.
You know, I wanted to put The Poisoner on vinyl, but it's too long. I would have to take a song off.
Yeah, and and if you try and jam the songs that you've got on there, the quality really suffers. Back to Venom, one of their, what album was it? I think it was Possessed, the Venom album Possessed, I think it was. It was quite a long album and they tried to cram it on the LP without cutting the track out, and the quality was just a joke. That was the story I remember anyway.
Yeah, it's not worth it, you know, because audio quality is important to me. You know, I think you can download, I know you can download MP3s, but you may be able to download FLAC as well on Bandcamp. I'm not sure. I try to get the FLAC out to people. Yeah.
Get the FLAC out. Yeah.
Get the FLAC out of there.
High quality download in MP3, FLAC, and more. That's directly from the Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Right, now I've lost you. Where are you? There you are. Welcome back. What haven't we covered, Lisa? We've had a good old chat here. This is great.
Yeah. Well, I'm also like I said, White Crone is a recording project. But I joined a band, an existing band from Portland called Splintered Throne. And I was a fan of theirs. And I had their CD, one of their CDs. And I saw them open for Last in Line and for Flotsam and Jetsam when they came to town. And they played a gig. And the singer announced that he was leaving. And so I had a friend with me. She's like, go talk to him, go talk to him. And I was like, really? And so I did. And I did an audition with them. And they asked me to join the band. So we've had a gazillion delays. This was in 2019.
Yeah.
Right. And so they have day jobs and families and stuff. And then I've got my blues thing. And so those were some delays. And then the pandemic. So it's like we couldn't rehearse, and it's just a mess. But we have songs written, and we're getting into the studio soon, and we're going to make a record, and it's going to be a killer record, and it's very much like old school 80s metal. It's got some power metal influences. It's got some early black metal and thrash influences, but it's super melodic. You know, these guys are really into Maiden and Anthrax and stuff like that. So I think it's good. And Dio, and I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to this. And that's a band. And I'm you know, the vocalist. So that is a band that will perform live in the future.
Not playing bass on that one?
I'm not playing bass in that band. They have a bass player. So to learn how to do that. What do I do with my hands? I don't know.
That's exactly what I was getting at. How are you going to be on stage without a bass hanging around your neck?
That's freeing. I can just jump around like a lunatic if I want to.
Okay, good.
Kind of cool.
A lot of, I've seen bass players and then just sing and they're just stuck. And it's like, fuck, what do I do? Excellent. So I've got that security blanket in front of them.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what's happening in that regard. What else have we got to chat about? Holding up your Friday night here.
Well, eventually, you know, I've got a few new White Crone songs that exist in skeletal form. Like I said, my life gets busy. I'm actually surprised at how busy I got as a blues musician during the pandemic, because I did a lot of live streams. I actually did the Great British Rhythm and Blues, I think that's what it's called, festival. I performed the festival a few years ago, but they asked me to do the virtual festival. I did a festival, I think it was based in Australia as well. I've done a lot of these, you know, I did this Can't Stop the Blues thing, which was a big series. So I got really busy live streaming, and you know, that was a lot of fun, but I haven't revisited the new White Crone songs. I think these are gonna, I'll probably hire more real guitar players, because, you know, to be honest, some of the guitar solos on The Poisoner are kind of like baby's first solo, because I really just taught myself by watching YouTube videos, you know. So some of it that I'm writing is a little more complex, and I'll probably hire a real guitar player to play some of that stuff. Stay in my lane.
Yeah.
But Vinny Appice will make an appearance. I promise you that.
Oh, good. Get him out of his room. When you're doing the live stream, are you doing it like where you are now?
Yeah, from home.
What's that on the wall behind you?
Oh, this is a screen that I have. I just bought this. It's a I think it's from the 1800s. It's a story about this warrior. I can't remember the story. This warrior is about to be executed, and this giant skeleton comes in and scares the hell out of this guy, I guess.
Right, yeah.
So I can't remember the story, but I saw this online and said, because I just set myself up here. I got a screen, and instead of doing the backdrop where it's like your head is vanishing half the time.
Yeah, no, that sucks. Yeah.
Get a real backdrop.
Yeah.
So I just thought, what a cool, interesting.
I got to do the same here. I actually took the mirror down and put up a photo of Justin from the Darkness up here. So make it a little bit more metal.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah, they old school, man. I love the Darkness. Yep, they keep it real. They
trying to get it without all the reflections.
Yeah.
That was the last gig, like international gig in my city before lockdown. The Darkness actually had to leave the country the next day.
Wow.
Cut the tour short and leave the country the next day. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to get out. And I managed to snag a photo pass from that. So that's looking
right on. Hey.
Right up Justin's nostrils. I won't be able to hang it up there again now without breaking it. So I'll just leave that down. But you can see I need a screen like yours.
Right on.
I think we've pretty much covered it all for now. Maybe
For now.
maybe we'll have a talk to you when that album with that band you joined.
Yeah,
What was their name again? Was it Splintered Throne?
Splintered Throne.
Splintered Throne. Oh, keep an eye out for that
Yeah.
one. Keep us informed about that one.
Will do.
We've pretty much covered it all, Lisa, I think, don't you?
I think so. I think
It's been
so.
great having you on. Been great having you on. Been a really good, nice, relaxed chat about everything. And thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you. And thank you for listening to my songs.
Oh.
You know, I'm glad you enjoy them. I mean, really, you know, I try to make a living at music, and it's always great, you know, when people, you know, buy your stuff or buy tickets to your show or something like that. But what really feeds us is just knowing that someone's listening to this thing that you put all this time and effort into, and you kind of pour your heart into it, and just to know that someone's really listening and enjoying it. I mean, it gets you right here.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And a thing I always do is to get, could you flash the horns for me, please? Look right into the camera, flash the horns.
All right. I got the chewing gum.
Excellent. It's important to be heavy metal about.
You do the invisible oranges thing. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, there's a lot of that over the years, I'll tell you what, especially in the 80s. Right. Lisa, absolutely great chatting with you. Thanks so much for coming on. Really good luck with Poisoner.
Thank you.
Magnificent trip back in time. I love it.
Right on. Thank you very, very much.
You are more than welcome. Anytime, you know where I am. Thanks and stay safe.
All right. You too.
Metal, and we'll see you again soon.
All right, man.